Bannero is the first one on. Michael Frank as well. Tier DeYoung saying hi from SoCal. Bannero is in Connecticut, I believe. Pedro Foiling Sailor is present, sir, from Sydney in Down Under, where it's early in their Wednesday morning. Fritz Mueller in Miami. Welcome to all of you. We have Clark Chapin standing by as our guest host today. There's Clark with me here at the Portage Yacht Club. Greg Phillips from the Gold Coast of Australia. Steve Atkins. We've got a picture of Steve and his wife Rita later on in the show as we get this one, show number 722, over the starting line. Welcome. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Tell me if the audio or anything is not perfect or nearly perfect. We are in a very lightweight. I brought next to nothing with me from San Francisco so that I didn't have to check a bag. Yes, as we do two shows this week, today and Friday. We didn't do a show last Friday because we were in the midst of my mother's memorial service. We'll tell you more about it. Clark was there. Bannero wants to know, Clark, where's your scarf? You don't have a scarf on, Clark. My longtime friend, we've known each other at least 50, 55 years, Clark Chapin, who's here with us for show number 722 for Tuesday, the 2nd of July, 2024. Yeah, we'll lower the background audio. Thank you for that, Fritz Mueller. I do have my big clunky headphones on so that I can hear my audio, Clark's audio, and the background audio as well. As I said, we are here at the Portage Yacht Club, and I even have the slides working. I'm literally doing this on the slides are on the phone with a keynote. It works pretty well. And then a laptop that's running OBS, for those of you who are nerds like Clark. And then we have an audio, little tiny audio. If those of you watching the test yesterday will know that we have a little Zoom, whatever it's called, but it works perfectly and very portable as we welcome Joe Holtzman, who used to race out here, Clark, from sunny Estes Park, Colorado, where he says it's 70 degrees. You remember Joe, of course.
Oh, yes.
Hold that mic right up there.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Let's check your mic level, Clark.
First time I sailed the Interlake Nationals was crewing for Joe in 1973.
Well, we have a lot of family history, a lot of history here, and it's a delight to have Clark with us and any numbers of others of you probably watching who don't normally watch the show. Julia, I see she's on. I apologize, Julia, but I'm on vacation. That is the Portage Yacht Club on the south end of Portage Lake here between Dexter and Pinckney, Michigan. For those of you who are geographically challenged, there is the Portage Yacht Club just northwest of Ann Arbor, the home of the University of Michigan. And Clark, I got this Michigan sailing hat from you. How'd you get this?
Well, I gave them some money each year, and they sent me a hat last year, and then this year they sent me another hat, and I already got one, so I thought you could use it.
Well, that's very kind of you to pass that along. The Michigan Sailing Club is at the lake next door. If you look in the upper left corner, you'll see Portage Yacht Club on the south end of a bigger lake called Portage Lake, which is part of the Huron River chain of lakes. Long story short, next door to us is Baseline Lake, which is just really a wide spot in the Huron River. And that is where the University of Michigan Sailing Club is located. I'm proud to have this hat from Clark and appreciate it very much. Been here for almost a week now. This was the other night. Here's some audio from me.
Northerly breeze slowly dying off.
It's 9:30, 21:30 here. Sun just below the horizon. We're on the western end of the Eastern time zone. We should actually be in Chicago time, but for historical reasons, people here in Michigan wanted to be on New York time because of the trains and because of the stock market. And that's why we are way out here to the west. And that's why we have on nights like this time of year when it's the longest days, starting to get shorter, beautiful sunsets. We've had not the big heat that they had in the Northeast has gone down. We had a couple of chilly nights here, but it's going to get hot again as we ramp up toward the 4th of July weekend. The racing here is epic. It's been going on since actually the year I was born, 1953, when the racing club was formulated by people living here on the lake. These are the Interlakes, the 18-foot Francis Swiesguth design class. Was originally, Clark, a sloop. It still is a sloop, but it was originally just main and jib, no spinnaker.
Correct.
And?
Well,
you're a longtime class officer, aren't you? The secretary or the president, or?
I've been all of those, and currently I'm the Michigan vice president.
So you've been through the flags once, and you're going back through them. What's the greatest thing? What's the best thing about the Interlake?
It's one design nature. We've got boats that are probably that are 50 years old. That'll be competitive at this year's Nationals down at Hoover in near Columbus in Ohio.
Hoover Yacht Club. And tell me, Clark, who's 1317 there in that photo?
That's my boat. So
that's your boat, which I had the pleasure of sailing in the Thursday night race. You were running the race, so you took these photos from the race committee boat, and thank God it was light air, because my poor old back, and I haven't sailed a small boat in over a year. Well, a year ago when we were here, and I was sailing your 1317. Thank you very much. And there is somebody else with my sister crewing. What was that all about?
Mark Gleichert lives down the way and keeps his boat there. And Chris desperately wanted to sail, and Mark was desperately without a crew. So it was a match made in heaven.
That's Chris, my sister.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you took that picture Thursday night, and it was in the club newsletter Friday morning. It was on my Facebook page Friday. Checking in with the Fozy here from Portage Yacht Club, Christopher Gillingham checking in. As we check in, he's saying hi to Sailing Illustrated on tour. Gordon Smith in Denmark. The Gillinghams, Christopher and Jane, are in Leamington in the UK. Ed Worley in SoCal. Julie Aarons in Cleveland, where it's also warm and sunny. Not so sunny here now. Jay Hanfield asking a question. He's in Newport, Rhode Island. Are the winds fluky, or do they have a steady wind direction? No, Jay, the winds are definitely not steady. In fact, the weather pattern here in the upper Midwest follows more or less a 7, 8, sometimes 9-day, 10-day cycle of a cold mass coming through from the Northwest, not the Pacific Northwest, the Canadian. Blast of cold air, frontal passage, a lot of wind out of the Northwest for a day or two. In fact, yesterday we had such a breezy, windy day out of the Northwest, cools everything down, settles the dust, as my dad likes to say. And then it clocks around to the north, and after a day or two, east and then southeast, waiting for that next frontal passage. And when it comes through, the next frontal passage, by then the breeze is blowing out of the southwest again and blowing hard, hot, humid, and then the northwesterly comes through and cools everything off on more or less a 7, 8, 9-day cycle.
Might be a little shorter than that this cycle, but because we're supposed to have another cool front go through tonight or tomorrow, but should be no rain for the 4th.
So there's the answer to your question. It is light and shifterly here, Jay Hanfield, most of the time, as Joe Holtzman, who's watching, can attest, and Craig Gordon, who's down on Lake Norman, will attest. Marcos Weinstein, who is down in Orange County, SoCal, where it's beautiful, warm, usually lightish, light to medium air. But here it was light Thursday night, as I said, thanks goodness. we had 3 races. I had a first and 2 seconds. The boat behind me, it looks like I'm letting him go by, but the mark is in the foreground left, kind of lower left corner, and all I want him to go is be sure he goes by me to windward so he doesn't get inside, right, Clark? And
Yep.
then I've got, there's a very short hitch up to windward to the finish, so we were in good shape. Marco says it's gorgeous in Long Beach and Newport. Gordon Smith, I would love to have a day sailing with Clark Chapin. He would spend the day teaching me everything and make me feel good about being so stupid. Gordon's a good sailor, you know that.
Yes.
You know that he's a good sailor as well.
Well, I'm often confused, but never in doubt.
Now, when you talk, you got to look right here, over here in the camera, so that you're looking over here with me at the big monitor. Clark, thanks for taking those pictures, and thanks for letting me use your boat the other night. The other night, Thursday, while we were racing, was the famous debate. And I have had more memes and images and jokes, cartoons from the various foci after the so-called panic attack. That's not my word. That's what the media hear, because, you know, left, right, or center, most people were not amused with what happened Thursday night. This from one of our foci: I thought the debate was bad, but you're going to hate the swimsuit. How's that, Clark? Huh? The swimsuit competition. You know who sent that?
I can't unsee that.
That came from Jody. Jody Shields sent that through in Australia. But wait, there's more. This one, you want to read that?
Electile dysfunction, the inability to be aroused by any of the parties standing for election.
And you know who sent that? Yeah, Ted Ryman.
Yep, Ted
in
Ryman.
the Republic of South Africa. He's famous for his pithy comments and cartoons. I don't know who sent this. Somebody sent this through. When we changed the clock, and they're making fun of me, Clark, because as you know, I hate the change back. You like the change to daylight savings time.
No, I tolerate it, and as opposed to all the other possible arrangements.
You tolerate it. Well, I hate it. I think we should stick on one time zone year round, as you all know, but let's don't debate that now. When we changed the clocks, who is that? Is that the actor, is that Marky Mark, or is that?
No.
The actor from Boston. I don't know. When we changed the clocks this year, I didn't expect to go from standard time to the twilight zone.
That's good.
Huh? Wag, wag. Ted, yeah, Rick's giving the finger wag. If you got to get it, because Julia's not here, so you got to give the wag.
I'll just warm it up.
Warm it up for Julia. I apologize again, Julia, for not having shaved, but typically it's just I'm on vacation, so it is Mark Wahlberg. Marky Mark, Fritz Mueller says. And Ed Worley agrees. Marcos Feinstein agrees. Okay, well, that was that. Finally, everyone, I think, here in the States probably agrees with this, and maybe outside the States. Has anyone tried unplugging the U.S. and plugging it back in, Clark? You're an engineer. Would you try to reboot the U.S. at this point, or?
I can't find where Control-Alt-Delete is on the keyboard.
Yeah, but you're a Microsoft guy. Alan Long, the world is aware of the foolishness of the political goings on in this country. I'm here principally, I mean, the 4th of July this week, our Independence Day, but we spread my mother's ashes, my beloved mother, the late, great Janice Davis, better known to you online here as Jan Dav, who was born in 1934 and died last November in 2023, had a long, nearly 90-year life. And she watched this show, was a big fan of the show. Julia and I would normally call her right after the show when we were in San Francisco. And this was one of her very last photos before she passed last November. She insisted, I drew that sign up for her. Big hugs to the Fozy, love Jan Dav, and she was a big fan and most appreciative of many of you with whom she became at least online friends, especially Peter Stevenson, Pedro foiling sailor down in Australia, with whom Peter kindly struck up quite a relationship with her, and they had a lot of fun together. That photo, again, from last November, November 2023. This was the other day. If you look here, you'll see Clark. There's Clark with the hat on, and his wife Karen. As we walked from there's my sister Ruth. Just to give you a little insight, my 91-year-old father is driving over to the tree under which we're going to spread the ashes. There's some Croutonic guitarist. And we're playing Oh When the Saints, and all the family and friends, special close-in friends, walking from the farmhouse over to the tree in what was it was a nice, relaxed, poignant occasion, wouldn't you say, Clark?
It was a fantastic day, and big day for Karen as well.
Because your wife, Karen, what, 2 years ago today?
2 years ago today, yeah.
Did what? Suffered what?
Well, we were in a car crash, and she was very seriously injured, and her mother, who was with us, was killed in the crash.
In the back seat.
In the back seat. But
driving home to your home in Western Detroit.
From the fireworks display here at the lake. So.
And that was some drunken idiot coming the other direction?
He tested positive for methamphetamine, and then has since tested positive for methamphetamine while he was out on bail as a condition of his bail. So he's been a guest at the Hogback Hotel in Ann Arbor since mid-February. That's where the county jail is.
On Hogback Road.
And we've got another court date coming up at the end of July.
Well, it's not funny. It's a very sad, sad day for Clark and Karen, as Joe is saying. But I was astonished, Clark, how good she looks, how well she sang at my sister's home, but at my mother's memorial the other day. And you've got to leave to get back into town because you're going to celebrate the passing.
Yeah.
Memorialized.
But it was also special because Karen was the choir director at the Webster Church in Dexter, and your mother sang in the choir for absolutely as long as she was able and before the pandemic hit. So it was a very special day for us for that as well.
Well, it was a special day over at my sister's farm, and we did walk out to a tree that was planted last November. We'd all come back because we knew my mother was not long for this world, and the tree had been planted by my sainted sister Ruth, who took care of my mom in the last few months of her life. Spread the ashes under the tree, and it was a solemn but fantastic occasion. Went back to the house, had some food, and it was a nice day. Clark, thank you to you and Karen for helping lead the way on all of that.
We just, like I say, we had that marked on our calendar. We didn't want to miss it.
Indeed. We also celebrated yesterday. Oh, Canada. Canada Day, the 1st of July, which of course is they call it their birthday, or some people do, but it's really not, because Canada had been around before that. It's the National Day, formerly called Dominion Day, a federal statutory holiday. It celebrates the anniversary of the Canadian Confederation, which occurred on the 1st of July, 1867, just a few years after AC 0. America's Cup, the first running of what became the America's Cup. With the passing of the British North American Act, when the three separate colonies, I did not know that, of the United Canadas and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, so the Maritimes were united into a single dominion within the British Empire called O Canada. So that was yesterday. That was the first. This, you recognize that person, Clark, in the middle?
No.
That is Sharon Green.
Oh, okay.
She did that, the famous photographer who promises to come on the show. She from Toronto originally, and we feature a lot of her stuff out here on the show, the great artist that she is and photographer. And there is a selfie with some of the Canadian, the beaver and the bison and the deer. I don't know what all those are. What are those, Clark?
Well, there's a goose and a squirrel in there.
And the Canadian maple leaf.
And a raccoon, yep, and the maple leaf.
So that was yesterday, and the question is, what are we celebrating today? There's your first hint. Any idea?
Nope.
Neither did I have any idea that today was World Sports Journalist Day, so we're celebrating ourselves to the extent you would be kind enough to call us a journalist. July 2nd, 2024. Apparently this has been going on since the 90s. I don't know what this is all about, but it was the only thing that was kind of upbeat and somehow relatable. World Sports Journalist Today, celebrated every year on the 2nd of July. But note there in the middle of that paragraph, sports journalism developed during the 1800s, but was centered on elitist sports and was more focused on reporting the social context of sporting events. In the 1920s, the profession began to take shape. But what do you suppose, Clark, was the sport in the mid-1800s that was one of the first reported on by the big newspapers, both in the UK as well as here in the US?
How many guesses are you giving me?
Exactly. It was horse racing and it was yacht racing. That was it. That's what was covered. One or two others, but that was the big deal. Happy Journalist Day, Graham Sweeney is saying. Ed Worley knew what it was. Jody Shields is complimenting you, Clark, on your microphone holding technique.
I haven't dropped it yet.
We won't make any jokes. By the way, Jody, you will appreciate that Rode is that very good Australian brand. And it's, in fact, Alistair Murray knows the chairman of Rode. I asked him about it because I thought maybe I'd get some free gear, but apparently they don't get along all that well. But Jody recognized that brand, and we have a number of pieces of Rode gear. What are we celebrating? What otherwise today? Well, as always, Clark, you can do this if you want. We are celebrating
all the FOSI, and thanks for contributing if you do on patreon.com, and one way or the other, be sure to like, share, and support.
Julia, he's gonna get your job. He keeps it up like that. Thanks. We appreciate all of you. Those of you who come on, those of you who have been on the show, we can't afford what?
You can't afford my rates.
And those of you who contribute via patreon.com/join Sailing Illustrated. He hit the road, Jack. Steve Gruber agreeing it's a good Australian brand. Has to be an oxymoron. No, Rode is quite famously good. They make all sorts of AV gear, and it's nice to have them as part of the show today. Now, Clark, you can explain who that is.
That is your esteemed father.
At age 91.
At age 91.
I took that photo this morning.
I'll bet you did, right at his desk where he is every day.
About 20 or 30, not even, 25 meters from where we're sitting here. We're in the lake room. We call this the lake room of the Portage Yacht Club. Behind us is the so-called park. Out here is the lake looking to the north. We're on the south end of the lake. And then the rest of the club is around behind Clark and myself. As you can see, there's another big banquet type room. And in the offices where my dad, my beloved father, is sitting. Guess what? He has agreed to come on the show, finally. After all, do you think he'll show?
It's a sure sign of the coming of the apocalypse.
My dad's agreed to come on, has agreed to come on the show to discuss the 720 rule because, Clark, guys such as, including Dick Rose, credit my dad. Mm-hmm. You remember, can you give us the thumbnail of how that all happened back in the 60s or the early 70s?
Well, I know your dad met Dick Rose at a NARU meeting, probably wasn't USYRU then, and they formed quite the friendship. And your dad had the idea that for a simple mistake, particularly in club racing, it shouldn't wreck your whole day. And particularly if you fouled somebody 4 minutes before the start, then the only thing your penalty was to retire. And of course, people didn't do that, so it led to protests and races being delayed. And they aren't, as much as I enjoy being a judge, protests aren't the fun part of the sport. And he came up with the idea of a circling penalty, which was originally 3 circles.
1080 rule.
But there was a 1080 rule. And then over time, it only became the default in the rule book in 1997, but that's still 27 years ago now. And it's now it's the two-turn penalty, so you don't have to complete all two complete circles as long as you do two tacks and two jibes in the same direction.
So we will ask the inventor, or at least one of the inventors. Other people help perfect it, of course, just like umpiring.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets a lot of the credit, and by authorities, as I said, no less than our rules guru in chief here in this country, Dick Rose, up in Seattle. So my dad has agreed to come on the show after badgering and pestering him, as Julia knows, for years.
Did you get that notarized?
No. I was afraid to. He might charge me he might want an appearance. See, that'll be Friday with any luck. We're celebrating the Kieler Woche, Kiel Week, which was the 143rd edition, wrapped on Sunday. We'll get to that in a minute. But before we do, I thought we should talk about the Olympics with our segment by our esteemed regular reporter who checked in last night with a terrific segment, a brief segment from Weymouth. Speaking of Olympic sites, that was the venue for the 2012 Summer Yachting Olympics. So there's only summer. And that was, of course, Coaching Corner with John Emmett. Enjoy.
Hi, Tom, Julia, and all the Fozy. Well, it's wonderful to be back at the Weymouth and Portland National Sailing Academy, and I've had a lot of fun in the D0. You saw the videos that I've put out on YouTube and Instagram, and yeah, a change is as good as a rest, and I think just slightly different body mechanics. My shoulders have really appreciated that. But without a doubt, there's one big thing coming up. Well, actually, I guess this month we have the Olympic Games. So, John Emmett Sailing's Coaching Corner is all about the Olympic Games, and you just need to think that people are literally dedicating their lives to this very special event. In fact, I'm here today with Lily, and they're doing a little bit of filming about the Olympic Games and what happens to sailors after. But the qualification process can be absolutely brutal. And one of the things is only one person per country goes. But sadly, sometimes that country decides not to send their Olympic athletes. And I think this causes a number of problems. One of the problems is if you're looking to get people to commit for 12 years of their life to campaigning, they need to know that if they get a place that somebody's going to be sent. I actually know of Olympic world champions and Olympic gold medalists who qualified to go to the Games in their own right, and when they were younger were not sent. And I know that a lot of countries have a strict criteria to meet before they send their athletes. But the problem with this, as I said, is it's hard to get people to dedicate if they know there's a chance they won't go. And as a sport, we're always fighting for the number of places we have at the Games. So I think there's roughly 10,000 athletes. If sailing is not taking their full quota of places, then I think, wow, you know, maybe we'll lose even more sailors at the next Olympic Games. And I think that the spirit of participation, it's really important to send the sailors who do qualify for the Olympic Games. And it's too late now, maybe for some countries to make changes, but I would urge in the future that every country that qualifies in an event will send a sailor in that event, and I think that will be good for the individuals and it will be good for the sport as a whole. So once again, if you're sailing this weekend, let us know where you're sailing, what you're doing, sail safe, sail fast, and probably most importantly, have lots and lots of fun.
John Emmett from the Coaching Corner, our regular presentation here on the show. And we appreciate John. And who's saying that underarm? What is this? Hi, Dave McGugan. Nice to see you on the show. Dave's another Michigander, a hockey friend of mine from long. Nice that at least John shaved. What? John shaved? So what? So what? John Emmett. Get to the front of the fleet. John Emmett Sailing, and we appreciate, as always, John's contribution to the show. Okay, we have a special that came in as you were sitting here just before we went to air, just literally before you walked in here to the lake room at Portage Yacht Club, Clark. I got this from the Royal, somewhat more esteemed club than the Portage Yacht Club, although. it's still another just sailing club called the Royal Ocean Racing Club, St. James Place in London. And that is a contribution from Alistair Murray. And I didn't know we were going to get an AAAA from Alistair. Alistair's awesome Aussie anecdote, because he is at the Royal Ocean Racing Club, where he submitted this, first of all, 2 photos. You recognize that? I didn't.
No.
That is Emmett, which is apparently quite a high-end clothing store. It looks rather tropical, Caribbean to me. Emmett in German Street, you know, the big fancy street there around the corner from St. James Place where the RORC is, and that's called Emmett of London. And they just stopped by there apparently to do some shopping and to make fun of John Emmett. I wonder if John buys his clothes there.
He ought to at least get licensing fees.
Especially for that one, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's Alistair's very cool video from the Royal Ocean Racing Club. I wonder if the RORC knows that he took a video inside the clubhouse in front of the Admiral's Cup. Huh?
This goes on his permanent record.
Probably. Here it is. There it is. Come on, play video.
G'day, Tom, Julia, and all the Fosey. This is A. Alice's awesome Aussie anecdote with Andrew and Andrew. What do you think, Tom and Julia? How good's this? The 3 boys getting together in London and getting together for dinner. And what we're standing in front of?
The Admiral's Cup. The very one that is being relaunched, and entries started on July the 1st.
There you go.
And there are already a few have already entered.
Yeah.
So this will be for the Fastnet and associated races next July.
This is pretty special. Come in, other Andrew. So,
Would you have to be? Do you have to be an admiral to? Because you've been an admiral, haven't you?
Yeah, but this was the number of admirals who presented it.
Proper admirals, or like you?
No, they were.
Imitation.
Yeah.
now you should come in the middle here, because
Yeah.
you're short. You're the
I can
shortest,
put that on my head.
and then we can still see the admirals. The admirals come out the top. Australia used to do very well in this. I remember.
They are
1979.
they are the holders.
Oh, we hold it.
Yes, we had to send legal letters to get him back.
Well, it's
Was
a
it
nation-
Queensland
It's
something,
a
wasn't it?
nation of
No, it was
thieves.
the Prince Alfred.
How did we get it? And why didn't we give it back?
Because, well, the idea is it's a perpetual trophy,
Yeah.
so there had to be another competition, and there wasn't because it got cancelled.
Oh, okay.
So how can you come
So-
in? Ask
So,
for it back
but it
then?
does belong to us.
So the Clipper Cup ended up in Australia too, and we just didn't tell anybody, and they never got it back. So here we are meeting for the first time. How long have we known each other?
Yeah, we've
A
known
couple
each
minutes?
other via the Tom Show.
Yeah, that's how it is. So yeah,
But it's the first time we've actually met. Well, I've known him for a long time, but first time
Yeah.
we've met Alistair, which is
I got
great.
to tell you, it's really weird when you meet 2 people you know so well already, and they're so familiar, but we're meeting for the first time. And that's all because of you, Tom and Julia, and we enjoy Sailing Illustrated, don't we? It's pretty
We
good.
do,
Yeah?
we do.
We might give you a clip later on when we've had a few more
We've
glasses
had
of
a-
wines
had
and
a
you
show.
can.
Oh.
So you can if you're up for that, Tom, we'll share some after dinner thoughts.
Well, even let our wives say hello.
Oh, you did?
Well, I don't know about let.
That's very brave.
Do you think that's a good idea?
They might say things about us.
Maybe. Oh, and we've got my wife Tracy doing fabulous camera work. I really appreciate this, Tracy.
Tom's have to do some editing. Yeah.
So what we do?
You got time? You got time?
We'll take a few still shots
Yeah.
of the dinner and the group. Another video might not be a good idea.
No, we'll definitely take
Or
some
maybe.
stills.
Or maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Let's see.
Anyway, it's wonderful to be in
Bye,
London.
Fosey.
Absolutely
And
wonderful.
Tom and Judy.
And to meet Andrew and Andrew. Tracy, you won't have any trouble remembering the 2 names. Which one's which? This one's Andrew and this.
Very
Andrew. Yeah, it's Andrew on the left, Andrew on the right. Great to be here with you 2 guys.
Triple A rated.
Triple A rated. And we're going to have a good night tonight, do you think?
Guarantee.
I think we will.
Yeah.
See you, Tom and Julia and the Fosey. Bye.
Ciao.
Over and
Ciao.
out.
Well, that was something else. I knew it was coming. I knew they were getting together because 1 or 2 of them had tipped me off. Tom Pace is saying yes. Pindar there in the middle when they finally got him sorted out so he didn't block the Admiral's Cup. By the way, I've said on the show before, Andrew McIrvin there on the right, as we look at this photo, is the chairman of the Admirals Cup Advisory Committee for the RORC, as well as the Secretary General of the International Maxi Association. They said, Clark, they were going to send us some photos at and after dinner, after they'd had a few more cocktails. But I won't be able to use those until Friday's show. But amazing they've never met each other. I mean, obviously
except electronically.
The two Andrews know each other. And I see too that John Emmett says he's meeting, what did he say? He's meeting Alistair in a couple of days. Alistair Murray. So Alistair's cutting a wide swath through the UK. Steve Gruber says he loves the stern anchor on that T-shirt art. AAA rated, Graham Sweeney. Yeah, AAAA and AA. Singer was saying. That is really fitting because those three guys and one or two others, but those three in particular my mother just loves all three of them, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, she did.
She was a big fan of all three, and that's, I think, very fitting that we have them on the show today. Andrew, Alistair, and Andrew, in that order. Thanks, guys. Tom Fay says that he met up with one of the Andrews, I guess he means Pindar, during the foiling week in Lake Garda. Oh, yeah, sure, they were there at foiling week at Garda. My name came up, and it was better. They probably were making fun of all of us, Clark. Oh, my goodness. Okay, that was nice, and there is the gang and the Admirals Cup at the RORC just an hour or so ago. Thank you, Alistair, for this AAAA. Alistair's awesome anecdote, and we appreciate very much his submissions as always. Bravo Zulu! Here to what is arguably the world's largest annual regatta. They don't even call themselves that anymore. They just call themselves a world festival. And what they're now calling themselves is KIWO, short for Kiel Week or Kieler Woche, if you speak German, 2024. They had 50 countries represented, as they usually do, even in this Olympic year, when most of the Olympic spaces are, as John Emmett said in his report, are already allocated. They had a huge turnout. It's a 2-week event. The first week is the Olympic classes, most of the big Olympic classes, one or two others. And then the second week is the less Olympic focus, but a lot of the sailors stay. And for example, in the ILCA 6, they had all women Olympians or Olympic hopefuls and so on sailing in the first week. And then in the second week, in the ILCA 6, it was men and women, and a woman won. So let's get into this. It's a cool event, a sailing festival with all facets, the Germans call it. The Kiel Week Regatta 2024 came to an end this past Sunday after 285 extremely varied sailing races between light winds and stormy gusts. In fact, it was Mediterranean almost for most of the first 2 weeks. Denmark was also narrowly defeated by the hosts in the nation's ranking in sailing, like apparently happened. What is it going on now? The UEFA Cup? This European soccer is going on.
Yeah,
the European Soccer Championship. And I know that the American Soccer Cup is going on right now because they're going to fire the American coach because he lost to somebody, Uruguay, or his team did.
There's only one reason why you hire a coach.
And that is to...
So you can fire him.
Anyway, there's something going on with soccer in Europe. I should know. I think is it UEFA? Somebody will tell us. The foes are all watching and focusing on it. And the skies wept at the end of the 8 international boat classes after 9 days of predominantly warm, summery, is that a word? Sometimes Caribbean conditions. The best examples of the have you been to Kiel Week? Have you ever been there? We lived in Hamburg for 8 years and enjoyed very much going up there, watching the event, meeting friends. I never sailed in it. I did judge in it a couple times. But the best examples of the attractiveness of Kiel Week were the more than 100 ILCA 7 in the first half of the event, the first week, with Germany's Olympic medal candidate Philipp Buell coming second. And in the second half, 71, J. Frederick Bland is proud of this, 71 international Olympic dinghies started. Victory went to the Swede Nicholas Edler. Quote, in both classes, we met the participants' wishes in terms of the number of races and the location of the regatta courses, I should add, said Bach. That's from a previous paragraph. He was the PRO, I think, overall PRO, who has been attending in Kiel for 15 years and also at the Olympic sailing competitions in Marseille. Interesting turnout. Here is a cool video.
And in the end, it finally happened. The typical Kieler Woche weather. Often quoted, much feared, and yet somehow beloved in the sailing world. Clouds, rain, and wind over the Kiel Fjord influenced the preparations in the morning, the sailing on the race courses, and the images captured by Kieler Woche TV. The starting signal was punctual, with a consistently shifting and decreasing wind of around 12 knots. Today, once again, the Open ILCA 6 class featuring one of Finland's leading lights, Olympic sailor Monika Mikkola. In race 1, Stephanie Louise Norton from Hong Kong found the best path and sailed out to the front, unchallenged from very early on the first upwind leg. Norton, who had already competed in the women's dinghy in the first part of Kieler Woche and finished 25th, completed her 9th race day in Kiel today. Mikkola, leading in the overall standings, had a stroke of tactical bad luck. She couldn't position her boat where she wanted and ended up in the middle of the pack. At the first mark, the Finnish sailor was battling for the inside position, but Mikkola's rounding manoeuvre went completely wrong, resulting in a costly penalty. Meanwhile, Norton continued her tactically astute sailing on the second upwind leg and the final downwind stretch, securing an advantage of about 100 meters over the pack, a commanding distance that she maintained until the finish line. In race 2, Norton quickly took the lead again and defended her first place position all the way to the finish. This kept alive her chances for a podium spot. Morten Ben Burkhardt from the Kieler Yacht Club, Germany's medal hopeful, also had a shot at the podium after finishing 13th in the penultimate race. In the last race, the overall leader Mikkola encountered problems from the start and was temporarily back in the 50s. Sweden's Kieler Woche took an early lead, while a close battle was underway for second and third place in the overall standings. On the final upwind leg, Zach Stieb moved into silver position, while Morten Ben Burkhardt and Stephanie Louise Norton chose the wrong side, allowing Stieb to make a comeback from behind. Kieler Woche comfortably won the final ILCA 6 race ahead of Jared Toe from Singapore and Lucas Collin from Thailand. New Zealander Stieb finished the race in 6th after his impressive comeback, securing the silver medal ahead of Veika Banuban from Thailand. Burkhardt ended up 15th overall, slipping to 5th place in the final standings. In the end, the gold medal went to Finland's Monika Mikkola with a 20-point lead.
It was, we had 3 races, obviously, with this offshore wind. It was all over the place, but somehow I managed to be consistent.
As part of the program at Kieler Woche, new boat classes were also introduced this year. And for this season, the Wingfoilers had their premiere in Kiel. And with that, the races for Kieler Woche 2024 came to an end. In summary, the organisers can boast impressive numbers: 3,500 sailors from 53 nations, around 1,400 boats across 28 classes, and around 285 starts across 7 race courses. And sailing conditions were excellent throughout the event. The sailing world now turns its attention to the Olympic competition in Marseille starting in late July and the America's Cup events in Barcelona from August through to October. Many of the sailors who participated in this year's Kieler Woche will be featuring at these major events later this summer. See you next year for another exciting Kieler Woche.
What'd you think of that, Clark?
I want to know if the square rigger was racing.
No, that's it there. It's one of the boats that's in the harbor there. But
Yeah.
look at these numbers. I'm just repeating what we saw and what we heard on the video. 3,500 sailors from 53 countries, 1,400 boats in 28 classes, 285 race days on X-Mini courses, course racing days. I mean, it's bloody impressive. And it is a sailing festival because not only do they have these top sailors, even in this Olympic year happening, you would think they'd be off in Marseille or training, but they're still getting, obviously, they're getting Olympic class training there. But they are, and we're celebrating, as you heard, Monika Mikkola. It looked like she touched the mark in that video, by the way, and I guess she got penalized.
Yeah.
In the largest one design class of Kiel Week, in the mixed field of men and women in ILCA 6, Monika Mikkola from Finland showed what Olympic standard is all about. She'd already won the series in one race before the end, but she stayed on the water for the medal race and sailed the final race as well. This meant that she had competed in 20 races over the past 9 days, as she had already taken part in that the previous week. So bravo Zulu to her. The 28 years old's fighting spirit was impressive. Even after a weak start, she kept working her way up into a top position and eventually won ahead of New Zealander Zak Stibbe, and former Opti world champion Wika Bonnuband from Thailand. It's amazing how the Thais keep turning out these great Opti teams and sailors. Wonder what they're going to do.
They're an up-and-coming nation, that's for sure.
They sure are. So bravo Zulu, the best German was Morten Ben Borchardt from the Kieler Yacht Club in 5th place. In the ILCA 6, which again is mixed, men and women for that second week. The first week it was the women's Olympic division, just women. We should mention also, honorable mention, the headline was Last Gasp Victory for Jean-Baptiste Bernaz in a thrilling medal race at Kiel. He won the ILCA 7. John Emmett knows him well, could tell you more about it. But Frenchman Bernaz should have found the medal race fairly straightforward, having gone into the day with the yellow bib, as you see him there on the right, and a 10-point advantage over Australia's. There, we got that in there for Mr. President, Mr. Alistair Murray. Australia's Zach Littlewood. However, Bernaz found himself struggling near the back while Italy's Lorenzo Schiavarini sailed a start-to-finish race at the front. More importantly for the Frenchman, his friends and training partners, he's high-fiving there at the end, the German Philip Buell, were having good races up near the front. I wonder what that means, Clark. When Philip Buell crossed the finish line in 2nd place, he was in gold medal position, but with Bernaz back in 9th. However, 2 penalties, one apiece for sailors from Argentina and the Netherlands, allowed Bernaz to slip through to 7th across the line. It was just sufficient for France to hold on to gold, with Buell taking silver for Germany, and Norway's Herman, what's the last name? I didn't get the name, in bronze. So that was bravo Zulu to Jean-Baptiste. And by the way, today's, they did a special. Today's Tuesday, and Tip and Shaft came out and did a special article on this guy. Tip and Shaft, the famously good French free email newsletter that comes out normally on Fridays. Go have a look. Go if you're interested in the ILCA 7 and interested in this sailor, superb sailor. He thinks he's ready for the Olympics, and it sure sounds like he is. And again, J. Frederick Bland down in Austin, Texas, bravo Zulu to you and the OK Dinghy class. You had fully 71 entries in the OK Dinghy class, and it was apparently just a heated and terrific competition. Finally, they have a lot of fun at Kiel Week. Those of you who have been there, I know Fritz Mueller goes back from way back. I think he was a boat boy, didn't he say in the comments, Clark? Way, way back. But they have this stage there where they do during the day live TV. I mean, they got television coming off the water left, right, and center from those multiple courses. And they have concerts at night of famous German artists and beyond, rocking the stage at the Audi Sailing Arena. So Bravo Zulu 2, the 143rd edition of Kiel Week. It sounds like it was a terrific regatta. Clark, what's your view on medal races? Fritz Mueller says medal race crap again. He's also saying the OK class had a huge presence and great series drama. What's your view, Clark, on medal races?
Well, medal races were developed in an attempt to appeal to TV audiences.
Yes.
I don't think they appeal to sailors that much, but sailors aren't the TV audiences they're going for.
And
I thought for
what is
awarding
your
medals,
view of medal races? Being the diplomat that you are you running for president here? We don't know.
I wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it.
On the other hand, I like what the Star Sailors League Gold Cup did when they were racing the stars, where they, on the last day, they had multiple races where they kept paring it down, and the last race was the top 4 boats, and the way they finished was the way they handed out the medals. I thought that was a great system that kept the interest high throughout the 2-hour televised event.
What do you think of throwouts in general?
There's a reason why it's the default in the scoring system, because sailors tend to expect them. But I think having non-throwouts or not allowing throwouts makes for a better, particularly if you're selecting people to go on to the next level, then consistent performance should be rewarded, and throwouts penalize that.
We're going to run a segment in a few minutes on as a preview for the TP52, the 52 class World Championship, which is taking place in Newport during New York Yacht Club's Race Week in a couple weeks' time. And that class, as we saw when they were racing in Newport the week before last, they count everything. Everything counts, just like the Star class used to, like the Finn class used to. I agree with you, Clark.
Even if you hit a basking shark.
Even if you had a basking shark and it knocked your rudder off, right? Bravo Zulu to Kiel Week, the 143rd edition, and especially to Monika Mikkola, who won the ILCA 6 Open, the Finnish sailor, and to wide acclaim, not just here, but in a lot of the media around the world. Now, Clark, what happened on the 2nd of July? Here's your first clue, 1843. 8 years before AC0.
Not a clue.
Here's your next clue. You know where that is? Beautiful. I wonder if several of our FOSI will know that in the Southeast especially. That's also the site of one of the largest regattas. In fact, I think the largest regatta in this country each year. There's a hint.
Charleston?
Well done. Charleston Race Week, and that is Charleston, South Carolina.
A little early for Fort Sumter.
And look at David James. He's already got it. I think he goes on before the show and Googles to see what I might, and then he says, well, he narrows it down to what Eamon will probably go with. An alligator fell from the sky in Charleston. Clayton Embley knows that is Rainbow Row. Yes, it is. In beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, which I think has now surpassed San Francisco as the #1 tourist destination, given the problems we were having in San Francisco. Oh, my hand's in the way of the camera. Given the problems we're having in San Francisco with, well, things. Okay, so what did happen?
But it's not reliably windy.
Say again?
But it's not reliably windy.
Charleston's not.
Yeah.
No, especially this time of year. It gets less windy in July and August. Charleston, South Carolina. And there's an 1850s Honda Pilot. Oh, my goodness. So, yes, that was to be your next clue, an alligator in the rain. Holtzman agrees. Joe is saying it. Charleston is totally magnificent. Been there and loved it. Yeah, it is. It's a fabulous place to sail. An alligator in the rain. Here is Kimball Livingston's, at least where he went to school. That is New Orleans, the Times-Picayune. I had to look up, be sure that was the proper pronunciation. Picayune, maybe. From this same date, they ran an article there in, what was it, 1843. Sunday week, a day terrible for its heat in Charleston, according to all its editors. That is the paper there in Charleston. But towards the night, the oppressiveness of the weather was relieved by a thunderstorm, of which, and a ludicrous incident connected therewith, the Mercury, which was the local newspaper, gives the following account. I'm not going to read all this, but the thunderstorm was oppressive, and there was lightning, and yada, yada, yada. St. Paul's Church was struck. Beyond, last sentence, beyond this, we have heard of no casualty, unless we may account as such the raining down of an alligator about 2 feet long at the corner of Wentworth and Anson Streets. We have not been lucky enough to find anyone who saw him come down, right? But the important fact that he was there is incontestable. And as he couldn't have got there any other way, I couldn't have crawled there, I suppose, it was decided unanimously that he had rained down. Besides, listen to this. The beast had a look of wonder and bewilderment about him that showed plainly enough he must have gone through a remarkable experience. By the last accounts, he was doing as well as an alligator could be expected to do after sailing. See, this has a sailing connection through the air in such bad weather. Clark?
There was about 2 months ago, there was a report of an alligator sighting up at Kent Lake, up near the Metro Park, northwest of Detroit.
Just northeast
here,
of us.
and we have an interlake fleet there. So I wrote an article for the class newsletter answering the question, does an alligator rank as an obstruction under the racing rules of sailing? And the idea was, well, it depends on the angle, that if you're at right angles to him, yes, but if you're going in the same direction, probably not.
Ease your way by. Was there really an alligator there?
They
in
had
fresh
a
water?
reported sighting. Nobody's seen it
Are
since.
there freshwater alligators?
Yeah, but not generally in these latitudes. Nobody's seen it since. Nobody's confirmed the sighting. It might have been a case of ethanol consumption.
Yeah, at least. I think it was probably something rubbery. Oh my goodness, the comments are rolling in. It must have been a bewildering experience. It's got to be crotonic. It's got to be fake news.
Well, the guy swore that he saw it. That part was news, and having an alligator in Kent Lake was news,
Well,
but
I'm
it
talking
just
about
wasn't
Charleston,
true.
though.
Oh, Charleston.
Charleston. I mean,
Well, who knows?
having an alligator in Charleston after a rainstorm, a 2-foot alligator, so you think it was lifted by the, maybe they had a little mini water spout or a tornado or something, and lifted it up and put it in the corner.
Two feet includes the tail, so it's not a very...
They don't call it fake news anymore. What do they call it? It's now cheap fake. Sounds like a cheap fake. Gordon Smith, you can hear the editor now. Write a story about the rain and make it snappy. Correction, it was North Carolina. I thought it was Charleston, South Carolina. Okay. In any event, it must have been a bewildering experience. Okay, enough of all those comments. There it is. This day in history, an alligator supposedly fell from the sky, sailed from the sky during a thunderstorm in Charleston, South Carolina, back in 1843. Okay, enough of this mess. Clark, at some point you need a break,
Yeah.
You go to some of this stuff just to break it up. The America's Cup. We have to talk about the Cup for a moment, and there's the recon is over, and the boats are there. But I thought you would like this. Much closer up video of Alinghi Red Bull's rig going down. Clark, you want to see that again?
Yeah.
Now watch the mast and you tell me if the main parts from the mast or if the mast parts from the main, as some of us, as I asserted on the show when we saw this. Have a look here. Doctor, what's your diagnosis?
Originally, I thought that the sail had parted from the mast, but I think the mast buckled in compression.
Compression. Well, you're an engineer. That's not, you would expect that in some circumstances if it's under-designed, under-built?
Yep. and you'd know that, having sailed Flying Scots for many years. Only in that case, it was the boom that used to collapse.
Yeah. Well, that's one piece of news. I think that wraps that little incident up. And then, of course, as we told you on the show a week ago, the Team New Zealand, the AC-75 Taihoro, had arrived via ship, Stingray's kiwi fruit ship, in Barcelona at their colorful. Clark, you had a comment about their base on the show the other day.
Yeah, I said I'd hate to, view that first thing in the morning if I was seriously hungover.
Maybe it's a flashback. It might be a flashback. Anyway, it's very colorful ETNZ base, and there's only 53 days. I revised that lower third. 53 days to the start of the preliminary regatta, which is the last of the fleet races, and then they go from fleet racing to match racing. But that is, we've got Governor's Cup coming up, we got the Olympics coming up, and we've got Governor's Cup and the Olympics about the same time, and then we've got, of course, the America's Cup coming up later this year. If we look here at the Kiwi team base, they now have their big flag. It looks like it's flying from the Christopher Columbus statue there in Barcelona. And then they had a group grope for a photo as the boat was there before they docked out 3 days ago. And then they did go sailing, no problems. First time, every time, this team is going to be good. Everybody knows it. There, I said it, Julie Ahrens. I said it, Julie Ahrens. They're going to be good. And they are sailing. I don't have you can sort of see it over on the starboard side, on the leeward side here. They are sailing with their old foils, apparently the same foils. The analysts, Clark, believe those are the same foils they were using in New Zealand. That is not their latest and greatest and final, because once you splash your new foils, that's what you have to use, your one set. So what's your analysis?
Well, I think it's a sharp move on their part, particularly if if the recon period is over, that means the spying period has begun. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to show all your aces at once, that's for sure.
Well, we shall see. We shall soon see. And before we leave the America's Cup segment, we want to say, go get this book. I've now read most of it, and it becomes increasingly interesting as you go right through. You get through all the British royalty and who did what to whom in the 1830s and 40s leading up to the big, great exhibition and the America's Cup. And it's fascinating, especially for people like Hamish Ross and myself and others of you, Ed Worley, who are big America's Cup fans. And Clark, I will, when I'm done reading the book, and Julia is done reading hers, we'll send you a copy.
Oh, okay.
Unless Magnus the Magnificent sends a copy in the meantime. It's a fabulous book. I commend it to all of you, and I know a lot of you have already read it, including Ed Worley, and I think Gordon Smith and others. If you're just joining us, we are, an hour and a half into this, a little more than an hour into the show, 17:04 here we're in Michigan, just outside of Ann Arbor, the home of the University of Michigan. We normally go live at 1300 Pacific, which is 1600 here in the East, and we're at my home club, Portage Yacht Club, what we call the park, and then out here the lake. We showed some slides and videos at the top of the show, and we hope you'll go back and have a look at that if you're just joining us now. We're about an hour and 4 minutes in to this show, and we will do it again on Friday. And I think he said he would come. My father said he would join us for Friday's show, which gets us to the last leg. And this is a video about this upcoming, the promised video about the 52 classes, the TP52's World Championship in Newport at the fabulous New York Yacht Club's Harbor Court. And that will take place in a couple weeks' time. And here is a quick preview.
Newport, Rhode Island, the yachting capital of the United States and the summer home of the New York Yacht Club. Established in 1844, this prestigious club founded the America's Cup and was influential in establishing the rules for yachting as a sport. Today, the New York Yacht Club continues to organise major regattas and can boast 2 impressive clubhouses, one in Manhattan, the other at Harbour Court in Newport. And in July, this exceptional club and Rolex's oldest partner in the sport will host a world-renowned regatta, the Rolex TP52 World Championship, the first time this event has been held outside of Europe. The championship will take place during the New York Club Race Week and represents the highest rung of monohull Grand Prix sailing, attracting an international fleet of the very highest quality, competing in equally matched 52-foot monohulls, crewed by the best professional talent, often owned and helmed by skilled, passionate amateurs. The rules are simple. There is no handicapping. Results in all 10 races count. The first yacht across the line wins. With margins on the water small, consistency is key and teamwork crucial. From the helm to the tactics to the bow, all are working in unison. Racing is intense and competition close, with 3 different winning crews in the last 3 editions. Germany's platoon securing the title in dramatic circumstances in Barcelona last year. The Rolex TP52 World Championship commences on the celebrated waters off Newport, Rhode Island on July 15th.
Fabulous. July 15th is the start. I so miss Newport, Rhode Island. I think of all the places we've lived, with all due respect to San Diego, San Francisco, even here, Germany, Spain, Auckland, New Zealand's pretty nice, but Newport, Rhode Island, especially if you're a sailor, is just simply fabulous, at least in the summer.
The sailing's right in front of the town. That's a big plus.
And like Annapolis and like a few other places, like the Isle of Wight, like Melbourne, like Sydney Harbor. I mean, there's some great places around the world, but man, Newport is something special, and this is going to be a great event. I did not know that Rolex has been a partner with New York. The New York Yacht Club is their longest standing partner in the sport, which you may have heard on that video. Okay, Clark, Fritz Mueller is saying yes, most I knew we'd get an answer from our super smart Fozy. Fritz Mueller down in Miami saying yes, most alligators are freshwater, crocodiles another matter. There is a resident crocodile at the Coconut Grove Sailing Club down there in Miami, which, what's FPL?
Florida Public Lighting or something?
Florida Power and Light or something.
Light, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that must be it. Has a power plant 20 miles south. The cooling canals are loaded with them. But is that fresh water, Fritz? Clark remembers, Joe Holtzman is saying, Clark remembers Rodney Clevenger's mast falling right in the middle of Indian Lake.
That was, I was down there in the spring crewing for him before the Nationals. We came off the starting line.
Joe or Rodney?
Joe. I was crewing for Joe, and Joe's steering along. He says, boy, we got to tack. And I looked back and I said, well, you can't tack now because Clevenger's right on our hip. And then I looked back again and I said, you can tack now. His mast fell off. And then I went, thanks, God.
Oh, my goodness. Some more comments here as we are going to wrap this up in a moment. David James, it is relatively remarkable that nobody was hurt. Yes, especially when, you know how carbon, tell us about carbon, what happens when you have a fracture like that.
Well, it tends to splinter. It doesn't, it's not like steel that deforms and bends and absorbs energy. When it fractures, it releases all that energy and shrapnel goes flying.
It does, it goes out. Okay. Yeah, I agree, David James. Remarkable nobody was hurt. And the AC-75 masts are one design, Steve Gruber, but I don't think they're not one design build because each of the teams builds their own rig. I know that at least the Brits and the Americans, I believe, have built their own mast. Maybe the Brits built theirs in France and the Americans built theirs over here, I think, in Rhode Island, but I'm not sure. But I don't believe they're not like some classes, they're not single source manufacturer, right?
It would be easy. It would be very interesting to see the load cell outputs from the various strain gauges that I'm sure were located all up and down that spar, because looking at that in the seconds before the fracture would give you a big clue about exactly where the problem was.
Only they will know, at least until our Cup. They're not going to tell us anything afterwards. Thanks for facing the facts. Julie Aaron says they will be installing the new foils soon. Facing the facts, meaning her favorite team. Looks good. Stingray says they are sailing with their new foils. Are they, Stingray? I don't know about that. Julie Aarons is also fallen in love not only with Grant Dalton, but also with Magnus the Magnificent. She says, Magnus is such a good writer. Julie is in love with Magnus as well, in his prose at least. John Emmett, I'm a fan of clearly defined rather than subjective criteria for the qualification. Okay, they're back and forth still on Olympic qualification. Stingray, I'm looking forward to asking Eamon Sr. about why my nickname was Odd Job. Well, it's simple. It's because I was performing odd jobs as a 10 or 12-year-old, I don't know. And that movie came out in 1960. I guess I was 9 years old when that movie came out.
Yep.
Wasn't that 64?
Yeah, 64.
And the name of that movie was?
Goldfinger.
Goldfinger. And what were some of the characters in there? What was Goldfinger's first name?
Auric. A-U-R-I-C.
The Latin for gold?
For the Latin for gold.
And another famous character besides Odd Job, who had the hat that they threw, and he got killed by his hat ultimately.
Yeah, ultimately.
Who else?
The female lead, Pussy
Yes.
Galore.
And didn't we have a yacht out here for a long time named Pussy Galore? Miss Galore. It was discreet because they knew Julia, even in this day, would have shaken or wagged her finger at, so it was called Miss Galore.
Yeah.
That was a famously good movie.
Oh, yeah. It helped make Sean Connery certainly a star, that's for sure.
What was his best movie ever?
Ooh, I don't know. I don't like ranking them. I liked him in Hunt for Red October.
I rest my case. I totally agree. Hunt for Red October. Ted Ryman, as is Couch. Yes, when I was back talking about great places to sail and visit. OTV is on. Tom and Clark, the Michigan Sailing Royalty, joining forces, and I'm sorry, but the Newport Championships will be missing a number of Great Lakes boats that could challenge the best from Europe. Yep, Greg Normand, that's Greg, and you were on his show not too long ago, weren't you?
I was on his show. I had a chance to chat with him 2.5 weeks ago at the Crescent One Design event as well.
Yeah, I was on his show too, and we're going to have him on the show in due course. Graham Sweeney is confirming that the Brits, the America's Cup team, Ineos Britannia, used a French autoclave, or autoclave, as some of you would say. Stingray saying the AC-75 masts have minima specs, but the teams can overbuild it. Yes, of course. The teams also add parts like the mainsail tracks. Well, Graham Sweeney, you see his comment? Now that deserves a finger wag.
Well,
I shouldn't complain about being Odd Job. I could have been Miss Galore. Okay.
And yes, John Emmett's right. Honor Blackman was the actress that played that part.
How did he know that? He's too young. Who's Honor Blackman?
She's the actress that played that part. Try to keep up here.
I'm way behind it. Not forgetting Knick Knack. Who was Knick Knack, Clark?
Ooh.
Was there never a character named Busy Beaver? Gordon Smith. Julie Aaron's agreeing Red October with Sean Connery.
That gets a finger wag.
Do it again. We got to get that on camera here.
That gets a finger wag.
It sure does. Red October for sure. Julie Aaron's likes that movie. Yes, the AC teams can build their own masts, but the laminate schedule and everything else is specified by the rules. But it is, as Stingray said, it's minimum, right? Steve Gruber?
That's what Stingray said.
Thunderball as 007. Okay, they're still going back and forth on Mikael Lund and John Emmett on how to do that Olympic qualification in future, because it's done now. It's all over but the shouting. And, of course, the Olympics are just in, 30-some-odd days here before we get into the less than 30 days. Clark, Knick Knack was the dwarf, Fabian Harrelson. Fabian Harrelson surfaces and says Knick Knack was the dwarf. which gets us to whiskey. Thank God, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And you were wondering where I was going to stick this in. Clark, I don't know if you want to comment editorially about this, but you know how I feel. The non-sailing CEO has got to go. They've resolved the lawsuit, thank goodness. You're still very involved in U.S. sailing. Do you want to add anything here to all this?
Nope. Otherwise, I'll miss my ride home.
Okay. He would carry on. The non-sailing CEO has got to go. Now you can all have a drink if that's what your drinking word or phrase for the day is. Code flag N. Clark, that used to mean the races are canceled, but we no longer just use code flag N alone, do we? Why?
Sure. Well, if the race is abandoned with code flag N, and if that's displayed alone, that means return to the starting area, we'll do it over again. So usually it's displayed with either an H, which means the race is abandoned, go to shore.
Head to home. H
or N over A, which means race is abandoned, no more racing today.
N over A. This is code flag N. But it used to be, back before you were born, but I remember it. N was cancellation, but you took that flag out of the, not you personally, but you all took the flag out of the rule book because you didn't want race committees making that precipitous decision on the water. That flag used to be alone, stand alone for cancellation. I argued against it. I fought it at what was then IYRU, but I digress. Regardless, in my opinion, Clark maybe doesn't agree, but the non-sailing CEO has got to go. Fabian Harrelson, any mention of the 12-meter worlds he's asking? We covered that, Fabian, in the show a week ago. It was a fabulous event, and I don't know if you sailed in it, and if there's any more videos from that are less than 12 minutes or 20 minutes long, I will run it on Friday's show because it was a terrific event, the 12-meter worlds. Okay, but here we are. Clark, you sent this one in. You can read it, and you can tell us what this means.
When Monty Python's Life of Brian was banned in Norway, it was subsequently marketed in Sweden as the film so funny that it was banned in Norway.
Now, why did you send that in? Apropos what?
Well, because for several reasons, not the least of which is you and your mother's Norwegian heritage.
But we were making a joke on the show about the Norwegians and the Swedes. And not a joke, we were talking about the historical, actually, the Norwegian independence, right? We were talking about that on the show. We'll talk some more about it. By the way, while we're on a family show and talking about my late great mother, my brother Paul, who's here from Hawaii, that several of the Fozy know, what's Fabian Harrelson? I'm sailing in US 14, winner of the vintage class. Bravo Zulu, Fabian. My brother Paul had the 23andMe done, which is the DNA test, right? And would my DNA be essentially the same as my brother's, more or less?
You would hope.
One never knows. He did have curly hair. We thought maybe it was the milkman for a while. But we did look at his 23andMe the other day, which confirms that we're all Northern European. We didn't know where my dad was adopted, so we weren't for sure what his, but he looked very much Teutonic, blue-eyed and blonde as a kid. A Hitler Youth, although he wasn't anything to do with that. Is Tom holding an invisible microphone? No, I got my headset mic here so that Clark and I can talk. Clark, the next one, I don't know why I keep getting these, different people keep sending this to me. This meme, this style of joke, this genre, and this came from Greg Phillips in Australia. My banjo made it. That poor other crouton. And I tell you we're going to play sometime when we finally get together, the Vice Commodore of the New York Yacht Club, Claire Harrington, and I, who's a fabulous musician, I'm sure much better than I, probably about as in line with how good your wife is, Karen. And we are going to do some music together, Vice Commodore Harrington. And she keeps sending me these, but this one came from Greg Phillips in Australia. Now we haven't done an alcohol joke in a while, but do alcoholics run in your family? Miss Piggy asked.
No, they sail.
They sail. Guess who sent that? Bob Walker from North Texas. I think it's the first time he sent one in, or it's the first time I've used one that he sent in. And finally, speaking of alcohol, Clark, this was more by way of a caption contest. And the winning caption, I think, has to be, Jesus was here in this wine shop. That was sent by Ryman, of course. Ted sent that in from the Republic of South Africa. Banner was saying, yeah, it could be worse. Consider the banjo. It could have been an accordion, or both. My banjo and accordion made it.
I think my son has one of each.
Your son out in Oakland, California, neighbor of ours in the East Bay.
He and a band that he was in actually did a cover of the Van Halen song Jump, with him playing the intro chords with the accordion instead.
How about, what was the Squeeze Box?
Oh yeah, the Who had a song about that.
Graham Sweeney, Pluckin' Hell, another banjo player. Yeah, suppose you know the Budweiser joke. No, Fabian, tell us the Budweiser joke while I'm going through the last couple slides. We are to the finish line, and we appreciate very much all of you tuning in for this show number 722. Clark, your witness.
Everybody be sure to like, follow, and share with your friends. Share to your personal Facebook page. It helps the statistics and helps spread the word. And everyone's also welcome to help contribute to the show on Patreon.
By golly, you go on longer than Julia does with that slide. That was pretty good. And you didn't mention this.
And, well, I need training. Comments are always welcome, even in replay.
So here's Fabian Haraldson's joke. While we're on alcohol, what does drinking Budweiser and having sex in a canoe have in common? Lunabos, I'm speaking of wine country. That's Don Lunabos up in wine country north of us in San Francisco. Absolutely great show. Thank you, Joe Holtzman. We're still waiting for the punchline from Fabian Haraldson. It's effing close to water.
That's a finger wag.
Huh?
That's a
You
finger
think that
wag.
is a finger wag. Fabian Haraldson, that may be the joke of the day. We also want to say, as Clark already did, thank you to all of you who support us via Patreon and who just come in and watch the show. Those of you who've been on the show, they're all Fozy. And how did you like that? How did you like that AAAA?
That was great.
Plus the other two AAs at the RORC in London.
It would have been perfect if RORC had some A's in it rather than just R's and O's and C's.
Thank you for supporting us via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. And thank you all who gave us media, photos, video, and audio. I should start with audio. Audio, video, AV. Audio, video, and images, I think is the way I should do this.
Or you could do audio, images, and video and keep them in alphabetical order, the way it's supposed to be.
Maybe it should be. Regardless, we thank all of you. A lot of content for this show as usual, and if it was a bit more croutonic than usual, it's because I'm putting it together on a laptop. I don't have all my fancy screens in studio. We're very limited here with what I brought in my bagage. I didn't check. I think I said at the top of the show. And Ted Ryman agrees it was a great AAAA with AAA. It was great AC of Friday. Rick Banro, thank you for your contribution. By the way, just a reminder, we have on Friday, he said he would come on. I saw him nip in here in the back, Clark, while we were just about to wrap up. My beloved father, Tom Eamon Sr., age 91, who's running the club here still after, he bought it in 1966. So that's almost 60 years.
Yep.
Think about that. Almost 60 years in 2 years' time. We're going to have some kind of a session here on the 60th, God willing, and my dad's still at it. And he will be our guest to talk about the start of the 720 rule, which he and others are credited with starting, he, my dad in particular. This is the last little segment, the Fozy Focus, Friends of Sailing Illustrated. Cool people. I saved this for the very bitter end because our fuzzy Fozy, Rick Banero, has for the 8th month in a row, one of his photos has been on that famously good Northeast, here in this country, magazine, Wind Check. And apropos the 4th of July, which is here, obviously our Independence Day, I guess it's obvious, on Thursday, and a big fireworks show, Clark, here at the club on Saturday night. But Bravo Zulu, To Rick Bannerow, the Fuzzy Fozzie, for his continuing photographic excellence. Oh, shucks, what a nice shutout. Thanks, he's saying. Yeah, well, you deserve it, sir. You deserve it. And you were one of our most popular shows, wasn't he, Clark?
Mm-hmm.
Bannerow, when he's been on. Finally, apropos the 4th of July, we have this photo. Do you have any idea which Fozzie that is? A clue, he was the Alistair Murray. Good night, Tom, Alistair, and Andrew, checking in and out. Checking in and out. We ran your video under AAAA earlier in the show. Alistair, thank you. Everyone's delighted to have that. But apropos this image, do you know? Julie would probably know who that is. That was our first ever discussion, and we had Andrew McIrvin on shortly thereafter. A nutmegger, yeah, Bannerow knows that's a fellow Connecticut, a nutmegger, the nutmeg state. That is Steve and Rita Atkins. Steve, the past Commodore of some years back of the Madison Beach Club in Madison, Connecticut. I thought it was a perfect way with a Fozzie to end the show. Happy Independence Day to all of you who will be celebrating it here in the USA or beyond this Thursday. Clark, thank you, sir. Thank you very much indeed. Appreciate your coming on. Thank you again for letting me sail your boat on Thursday night.
Letting somebody sail your boat is like letting them borrow your wife.
You think?
In some ways.
In some ways. Clark, great to have you on. And unless there's any other comments, pressing comments, Ryman will let him have the final word. Replying to Alistair Murray, please say the three of you ended up in a barroom brawl. I don't think that happened, Clark. But thanks again, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your week. We will do a show on Friday. Here from, I don't know if from this room or someplace here at the Portage Yacht Club. Have a great rest of your week. In the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao.